Part 93. Even Brother Prime Minister Pai can't control my personal affairs. Before 8 o'clock, there was a knock on the door, which woke Xuan Huaifeng and Bai Xuelan. Bai Xuelan wanted Xuan Huaifeng to continue sleeping, so he got out of bed and opened the door, but when he saw it, it was Adjutant's son. Bai Xuelan asked what the matter was. Adjutant's son hesitated. "Chief, the Prime Minister's phone call requires you to go to the Prime Minister's office immediately." Listening to the tone of the Prime Minister's phone call, it is very bad. Xuan Huaifeng had just escaped from Zhan Luzhao's ambush. Not only did he reconcile with Bai Xuelan and became more inseparable, but the Prime Minister's summons to Bai Xuelan brought a new crisis. Secretly, enemies come one after another. Who is exchanging evil deeds? The war between warlords. Drug rehabilitation reform in the election of the chief of the customs. The complex world is like a stalemate chess battle, and the wrong move may be a dead end. The Prime Minister's summons. Even Bai Xuelan should not be taken lightly. Bai Xuelan asked Adjutant's son to wait outside the house, then went back to the house to change clothes and left. Xuan Huaifeng was finally awakened and could no longer fall back asleep. He sat up, put his hand on the pillow and asked, "What's the matter? Are you going out so early?" Bai Xuelan quickly changed his clothes behind the screen, wearing a put on a tailored suit, and said, "I guess it's not a big deal, but the Prime Minister called, I have to go." He walked to the bed, lifted the thin blanket on Xuan Huaifeng's body, lifted the hem of his pajamas, and looked down at him. Looking at Xuan Huaifeng's belly, he felt a little relieved, and said, "The medicine used in the German hospital is good. And the bruises have dissipated by 60 to 70%, so it is not scary." I kept stroking, enjoying the delicate touch. Xuan Huaifeng was greatly embarrassed. He brushed his hand and said, "Isn't it the Prime Minister's call? Don't hesitate, go out quickly." Bai Xuelan said, "Don't be in a hurry. I'll take a look." Xuan Huaifeng, just as he was about to ask him what he wanted to see again, Bai Xuelan had already taken out his feet from under the quilt and put his injured but still delicate and lovely ankles on his palms to take a serious look, and said pedantically, "From the outside, it looks better, at least the swelling is gone. Does it still hurt?" Xuan Huaifeng suddenly felt embarrassed by being teased for some reason, frowned and said, "It's much better. Why are you dawdling so much?" Saying that, he retracted his feet. Bai Xuelan laughed, moved closer, kissed twice on the ankle, and said, "Wait for me," in French. He straightened up and was about to leave when his eyes suddenly swept to Xuan Huaifeng's wrist again. Bai Xuelan stood up and asked, "Where is the watch I gave you? I didn't see you wearing it yesterday." Xuan Huaifeng had already lied automatically and said, "I have a loose strap. So I have someone take it to adjust the length of the strap, and I will send it back in 2 days." Bai Xuelan's eyes were a little sad, and he said, "It's my fault." Xuan Huaifeng was surprised and asked, "Why is it your fault?" Bai Xuelan said, "When I gave it to you, the length of the strap was just right. Now that you are wearing loose, you must have lost weight again. I won't argue with you. How could you lose weight in a few days?" he said, holding Xuan Huaifeng's wrist. Thumb and index finger wrapped around the snow-white wrist circled, as if to measure how much he lost weight. Xuan Huaifeng's face turned red. Great guilt. Feeling guilty, he actually went over, knelt on the bed and straightened up, wrapped one arm around Bai Xuelan's neck, took the initiative to give him a shy kiss, and whispered, "Come on. Don't waste your time on these little things." After receiving this kiss, Bai Xuelan felt refreshed and said, "Okay, I'll go here. You are injured, so lie down and recuperate." Xuan Huaifeng objected, "This bruise, if you say it's an injury, even I'm blushing. Since I entered the customs, I haven't done much. And the rest and recuperation took a lot of days. Don't say the words of those women, just do your thing, on my side, naturally going to do my business, I must not lie on the bed. Is there anything you want my adjutant to do? Bai Xuelan knew that he couldn't stop him, thought for a while, and said, all right, new regulations. The drafting is almost ready. And the Prime Minister has also asked about it in the past few days. If you are unwilling to rest today, just sort it out. With this thing, other things can be done neatly. Xuan Huaifeng said. That's how it should be. Bai Xuelan then walked out. Adjutant's son was anxiously waiting outside, but when Bai Xuelan came out, he couldn't say anything. The car was already ready. Bai Xuelan got in the car and went directly to the residence of Prime Minister Bai. As soon as he entered the gate of the Prime Minister's residence, a secretary surnamed He of Prime Minister Bai greeted him, as if he was waiting here. The Prime Minister has 4 or 5 secretaries. And this one has been with him for 4 years and can be regarded as the Prime Minister's confidant. Secretary He met Bai Xuelan, made a gesture to him, and said, the Prime Minister is waiting for you in the study, please. Bai Xuelan followed him upstairs. At the door of the study, Secretary He knocked on the door on behalf of Bai Xuelan. But he stood still and said in a low voice, can I come in? Bai Xuelan felt a little heavy when he saw the description of Secretary He's actions. After hesitating for a while, he heard the Prime Minister's voice coming from inside, come in. Bai Xuelan turned the door by himself and walked in very calmly. Prime Minister Bai sat in front of the large and generous desk, looked up at him, and said, I figured, you should come too. He lowered his head but held a pipe and filled it with tobacco. After filling up the tobacco, he put the pipe in his mouth, lit it with a Western lighter, half turned his face up, took a long puff, and stared at the glazed pattern on the window on the opposite wall. Bai Xuelan didn't need him to say hello. He sat down on the chair in front of the desk, and asked, you came to me early in the morning and didn't say anything. Are you playing quizzes with me? Prime Minister Bai snorted. Who has spare time? Play dumb riddles with you? When you do things, you don't care about the past and the future, you just make enemies everywhere. Do you think you really rely on your own skills for those prestige? If the backing falls, you and I can only be cattle and sheep under the sword of others. Bai Xuelan's beautiful brows twitched, and she asked, how do you say such depressing words? Prime Minister Bai said, look at it for yourself. I will try my best to block this news. However, it won't be blocked for long. He sighed, handed a telegram from the desk to Bai Xuelan. Bai Xuelan took it, glanced at it. Her face changed slightly, and hurriedly read it again carefully, word by word, and then put the telegram back on the desk as it was. Thinking about what it was, he remained silent. After a while, Bai Xuelan spoke slowly, with such a tragic defeat, I'm afraid there will be others who will fall behind. There was a rare dignified voice in his voice. Prime Minister Bai said, our Bai family's stance on not allowing drugs has always been very clear. Liao Jiajun received the help of the Japanese, not only advanced firearms, but also money to recruit a large number of troops, so he caught his father by surprise. 60,000 people, half dead, it's very heavy, he said. Even his heart for smoking a pipe seemed to be dimmed. He put his pipe on the table with a clatter, stroked his forehead, and sighed heavily. Bai Xuelan said, Liao Qifeng is a bastard who is a traitor who brings harm to the country and the people. I heard that some fields under his jurisdiction have pulled up the seedlings and are trying to grow poppies. Prime Minister Bai didn't know this, but he heard startled for a moment. She frowned tightly and said, can this foreign evil be grown alive in China? Bai Xuelan said, it's hard to say. A friend of mine who understands botany told me that poppies are cheap. They are not delicate, they can grow in many places. If Liao Jiajun gains power, our hometown in Shandong will become a drug plantation for foreign profiteers. Prime Minister Pai sighed, touched his forehead a few times, and said, "This is impossible, this is impossible." Bai Xuelan said, "If something goes wrong in Shandong, cousin, your position as prime minister may be mysterious. We need to do something to stabilize the rear." Prime Minister Pai said, "I think so. Just like you. There were too many casualties in this battle. My father has already made great efforts to recruit new soldiers. Otherwise, with the current strength, if we fight another battle, I am afraid that we will lose several counties. In addition, it is better to win the support of a few powerful warlords." Bai Xuelan said, "Don't we have a good relationship with the Han family in the West? They have a lot of people and guns. If the two join forces, it would be very good to destroy the whole litter of surnamed Liao." Prime Minister Pai was refreshed, turned around and sat upright, and said to Bai Xuelan, "I asked you to come over to discuss this. The power of the Han family is of great help to our family now. However, I have the best relationship with my father. Han Banshan, who we are friends with, suffered a stroke last month and was paralyzed. He couldn't speak. His nephew, Han Kasheng, took over his class. This person is the person we are most eager to win over." Bai Xuelan asked, "Otherwise, I will return. A trip to Shandong, will Han Qi win? I'll take the train tonight." Prime Minister Pai said, "That's not good. The six-party talks are about to start. And I can't do many important things here without your arms." Bai Xuelan said, "Then what about the Han family? The rear is unstable, and we can easily be overturned here." At this time, Prime Minister Pai lifted the corner of his mouth, revealing a mysterious smile, and said, "There is a cloud in the military, and we will win. Thousands of miles away. This one. We can use it." As he spoke, he picked up the pipe, tapped it lightly on the table, and put it back in his mouth. "Take a sip." After thinking for a moment, he squeezed the pipe's tail with 2 fingers, pulled it out of his mouth, and said slowly, "I have already inquired about it. The Han family will also send someone to this event in the capital. This person's influence on Han Kasheng. He has a lot of power. It can be said that Han Kasheng obeys his words no matter how big or small he encounters it. As long as he wins over this person, the overall situation can be settled." Bai Xuelan said, "Oh, who is this big man?" Prime Minister Pai asked, "Have you heard of the name Han Weiyang?" Bai Xuelan recalled and said, "I have a little impression. Is it a female general who has been in the limelight recently?" Prime Minister Pai said, "It's her. This female general, but Han Kasheng's sister-in-law. Although she is a female, I heard that she has more courage than men. When she comes to the capital this time, you have to entertain me on my behalf." Bai Xuelan raised his lips lightly and asked leisurely, "Why did you assign such a good job to me? You have so many eloquent secretaries, can't you use any of them?" "I'm doing customs, not public relations." Prime Minister Pai said, "I have a reason to send you there." Bai Xuelan was not someone who was taken lightly, but asked, "What is the reason?" Prime Minister Pai said, "As far as I know, this Miss General Han, she likes you very much. In private, she has given you a lot of praise for your actions against big cigarette dealers." Bai Xuelan smiled. Prime Minister Pai asked, "What do you mean by this non-yin and non-yang smile?" Bai Xuelan had a heavy conversation, but now he showed a lazy dash, saying, "I just vaguely smell the conspiracy. So laugh." Prime Minister Pai sank his face, raised his voice a little, and reprimanded, "You are not worthy of any conspiracy by others. It's time to do your hippie smile." This is a serious matter. You also think about how difficult it is for your father and my father to be in Shandong now. Bai Xuelan pursed his thin lips and remained silent. Prime Minister Bai added, I'll make it clear now. That Miss Han, you are bound to fight for it with all your strength. As for your adjutant, he's caused enough trouble for you. Halfway through, a person knocked. The door rang suddenly. Prime Minister Bai could only stop teaching his cousin, raised his voice and asked, What's the matter? Come in. A well-dressed servant opened the door, walked in and said, Chief Bai's adjutant. Send someone brought something, because the person who came said that he didn't know if the Prime Minister and the chief were waiting for it, so. Bai Xuelan interrupted him and said, Bring it to me. Holding a stack of documents, originally intended to be handed over to Prime Minister Bai, to see what Bai Xuelan had to say, hesitantly glanced at Prime Minister Bai's face, and handed the documents to Bai Xuelan with both hands. Then he went out immediately. Bai Xuelan took it in his hand and opened it to take a look. A faint, but sweet and gentle smile appeared on his handsome face. Prime Minister Bai was separated from him by a desk, and he couldn't see the documents in his hand. He asked, What's the most important thing? Send it here. Bai Xuelan said, It's the new anti-smoking and anti-drug regulations, which are very well written. Clear and organized. Prime Minister Bai frowned and snorted, I don't need to guess, it must be the handwriting of your adjutant Xuan. I don't know where he came from. But after making 2 documents, it's not a rule of thumb. Bai Xuelan said, He is a very well-behaved person. This time, before I went out, I told him repeatedly, saying that the Prime Minister has always kept these 2 things. Urging to ask for it is very important. So, he sorted it out and was busy calling for someone to bring it over. He was afraid of delaying our work. Prime Minister Bai said, Just help him say good things. Bai Xuelan was a little unhappy and asked, Why did my cousin suddenly have such a big opinion about my adjutant? Prime Minister Bai said, I have always been very democratic and open. In your life, you occasionally make a fool of yourself and do things a little more romantically. I will ignore it, however, don't make it too outrageous. Bai Xuelan asked disapprovingly, Why am I outrageous? Prime Minister Bai asked in return, I really want me to say it? What happened to the shootout outside the city yesterday? 7 or 8 corpses are still in the police department. Lao Zhou's phone number called last night, and he only complained to me. It was reported on the surface that the chief of customs killed a group of bandits. You still expect the same as last time. It's the same as arson. So I'll give you some merit? He started talking and couldn't help it. His voice also became severe, and he gritted his teeth with hatred for Bai Xuelan. Do you know how many people want to punish you now? At such a terrible time, the entire capital is like a dynamite barrel, and there is only one lead left to burn. You also fought with the Guangdong army for the sake of an adjutant. If I could move those Guangdong army, I would have moved. There are foreigners behind them, and the 6 party talks are in sight. The government cannot offend foreign countries. People, do you understand? There must be a bottom line for nonsense. Bai Xuelan said, Our father is in Shandong. And it was the foreigners behind the Liao family who were beaten. Shut up, furiously. It's 2 different things at all. Bai Xuelan yawned and handed the stack of documents on the desk in the direction of Prime Minister Bai, saying, This is a good first draft. The Prime Minister has time to look at it. God, I'll send a staff member to send the reconsideration draft. He stood up from his chair, patted his suit, and walked away. Prime Minister Bai called him, Damn. Where are you going? Bai Xuelan just walked towards the door and said, If you keep it, I will be scolded. I will not accompany you. Prime Minister Bai said, Bai Xuelan, leave me alone. You are full of a young master's temper in front of me. If you don't handle the affairs of the Han family for me, I'll take care of you and your adjutant. Bai Xuelan didn't turn his head back. As he walked away, he raised his hand to show an American victory gesture, swayed in midair, and left freely.